Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Masalah.
Hey guys,
Waalaikumsalam.
welcome back to IDN TV, which is now on air with Central Channel. Today we have our speaker, Mr. Yazan, as a game developer from where, sir?
From Palestine.
From Palestine. And we here have Zidane as the host with me, Hanif Ibrahim Zaki. Sir, if you can, may you introduce yourself first?
So, hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum. As Mr. Hanif said, I am Yazan. I am a computer science student in Al Madinah Munawwara in Saudi Arabia, and currently I have been making games for like 2 years now, and we're almost making our first commercial game.
So you are from Palestine, which is now taking college in Medina University.
Yes, exactly.
Which major, if I may know?
Computer science. Yeah, no problem.
Huh?
Yeah, I am into computer science right now.
Computer
CS.
science. How long have you been in Medina University, sir?
Well, actually, this is my first year, my first semester, so not more than 2 months, I would say.
First year.
Hmm.
What makes you interested in going to Medina University, if I may know?
Well, I originally used to live in a different city, and when I had the chance to apply for universities after graduating, one of the choices was the Islamic University of Medina. And as a place and as a good reputation of the university, I decided to pursue my career here.
Oh, so this is your first semester and first year in Medina Munawwara University.
Yeah.
Uh, since when did you start? Like developing games. I mean, yeah, or computers start being interested in computer science.
Well, so if you want to know, I was interested in computer science since 2019, where I landed upon, just building programs in a whole. It was like something really cool to see something you build, especially me as myself. I spend all the time on my laptop basically, so that's why I got more interested into the computer field. As for game development, since 2021, I've been getting into it. I've been always curious about how games were made, and the idea and the fact that you can create a whole world on your own is kind of, like something I would love to do. And that's my main goal here, to create something that I can show people what I have visually on my mind.
Okay. What was your first program about, sir?
But my first program was very simple actually. It was like a calculator. Then I built a portfolio website, getting slowly to making a restaurant application. That was all like a long time ago. So yeah.
If I may know, what was your first uh, developing language? Yeah. What first language did
My
you learn
first
about for
programming
computer
language
science?
was Python actually. Python is the easiest one of all, very close to English, which is called also a high level language. I had, most experience with Python and C sharp, I would say, because these two were like kind of like the simpler way to start computer science with.
Have you ever joined it like competitions during your when you begin coding?
Well, when I began coding, I was attending courses. I don't know if that would count as one, because there were like real-time courses where we would have to compete in the end of the term in like an exam or something like that. But more likely, I would say I also join game jams, which is this is very specific for the game development field, and there are kind of challenges that you can actually create your game within 3 days, or sometimes within any short amount of time, really.
It was team or solo competition.
Well, I had multiple ones in the game jams. My first one was actually a duo team, so like a team of two people, and it was a horror game for a game jam called Bracky's Game Jam, which is a very popular one into the game development field.
Um, what programming language are you learning now, sir?
Now I'm currently learning C++ for multiple reasons. I use Unreal Engine as a game developer, and C++ is what they use for the language.
Can you like tell us how you made it through all those challenges? How you
Oh,
started and how you and now you are.
so it started all, with just being a curious man. So I've been actually a gamer since I was maybe 5 years old. I always like loved the topic of video games, and one of my main parts that helped me actually become what I am right now is my passion towards it, because I had lots of experience of what are games in general. When I started, I thought it was very hard in the beginning, of course, like just anything else. And the main reason was, as a game developer, you have to think in every way possible: the technical field, the designing field, and sometimes even like the narrator and the story writing. So it all combines together into one field, which is very difficult to start with. Around like a year, I've been trying all the time tutorials and courses, and I would always like follow up a tutorial on how to make this kind of example project. But I didn't feel like it helped me that much until I started to do actual projects and actual work in a sense. And that's where I started with the game jams, like I mentioned before, which I made my very first game, the horror game I was talking about. It's called Aware. If you also want to take a look, I can share it with you. It's on itch.io. However, it took me like it was very hard for me. The game jams specifically, it took me like days without sleeping, trying to figure out new stuff, how to even, you know, I know programming, yes, but I never knew how to apply them. So this was a major fact or a major conclusion to be able to actually develop a game. And slowly doing more game jams, I started to be more flexible to the point where I got confident enough to finally start my own project or my own game.
Oh. And what inspired you to become a game developer, sir?
Well, multiple things. One of them is like I want to become somewhat a reason that people can be happy with. So, people have fun playing games, and that is something I would love to see for anyone that plays my game. If they're in a bad mood, they try
Yeah.
out this game and they enjoy it basically. So it creates good time for people. The second reason is when I was, I told you, I used to play games since I was 6 years old. I always wanted to have one of my own games, just to fill this gap of idea of I wish in every game they had this kind of aspect. Whenever you play a video game, you would be like, oh, I wish this existed here. You know what? I just build it for a future idea, and just like that. So it all like goes around to the main part, which I want to visualize my ideas. I want to like visualize my thoughts to the people around. I was always interested into telling stories, but in a different way than visual. That's where I saw game development as a good opportunity and a good choice for me.
Can you tell us about your journey into the gaming industry, or how your journey is?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Like, can you tell us about your journey into the gaming industry?
Well, my journey to gaming industry started all with trying to find people, I would say, trying to find connections, because I was always confused how to start things when I was on my own, even though I watched many tutorials. So, I started with off YouTube, joined the community, seeing what are the goods and the bad things about game development. And I would say a lot of things were kind of negative on me, but I tried to gain the people who had the positive thoughts and the one with the experience. So I joined communities on an application called Discord, which is pretty much known by everyone. Um, I joined some servers and I met some people that I would team up with to actually start doing, these game jams. I also mentioned again. Uh, I think making connections was the thing that helped me start my journey because I was one of these people who had the imposter syndrome, which is basically like thinking you are never good enough or never having the enough information to start something. But yeah, meanwhile I was working with the team. I started to know my role inside exactly, and I now kind of lean into game designing more than the rest of the fields.
Um, where did you exactly find those connections you mentioned before, sir? What in what platform?
So, like I mentioned, it was on Discord. Discord is like almost a gaming platform more than anything else, but there are like specific communities. Which one of them is Hitmarker. Hitmarker is a community where they list jobs and events for game developers. And they had a Discord server which I joined. I could communicate with other people, with other developers, and see, their interests and such. And that's where I made my first couple of team members.
So from Hitmarker, you found connections.
Mm.
What was the first game that you ever developed? And can you show us, like, share screen it?
Uh-huh. That's what. That's. Yeah, just give me 1 minute.
Okay, seriously.
All right. I just shared my screen, I believe. Let me know if you see it.
What is this?
Can you see what I'm showing here?
It's a horror game or something.
Yep. I mean, you can also have the link for yourself, guys. You know, feel free to take a look. This is basically a horror game which was made only in 3 days with the help of a friend of mine called Faisal, and he's also another game developer with me. These are some screenshots of the game if it loads. As you can see, we had the first person kind of game here, a horror one. This is made with a game engine called Unreal Engine.
That's made with Unreal Engine. With what language exactly,
So
or what?
actually here it was a combination of something called Blueprints and C++. For Blueprints, these are like visual scripting language that are built like nodes, I would say. It kind of saves a lot of time when you do basic functions. And I would say this project is 80% made of blueprints, 20% made of C++.
How many team members exactly that were put to make this game in within 3 days?
And we were only two people, me and a friend of mine, is like I mentioned. And well, yeah, that's all what I can say about it actually.
I think it's already great for your first game. I think
Honestly, it was so if you, I don't know if this is still working. Yeah, this is our results in a score. We got overall of the rank 183 out of 600 people, which as the first project, I would say that was good enough. As you can see here, this page was specifically made for Brackeys Game Jam, which had 780 entries or 780 people basically submitting their games, and I got rank 183.
it's pretty good already. I mean, yeah, out of 700 rankings, you placed the 183rd
Exactly.
for your first game.
Yeah.
And how did you come up with this game concept? And where did you get this idea from? That yeah.
Okay, so in this game jam, there is always a theme. And for this one, the theme was what's behind the door. So we were trying to build upon that idea of what should be behind the door. Should it be a puzzle game, a horror game, or what exactly? So we've been thinking about it, and we saw that the easiest way or the easiest genre actually to make games was a horror game. That is why if I show you back to this page, we had this kind of door, which, sorry, I think doesn't show unless you go back here. So this door basically was the main idea of the game, which is like the character had to basically seek through whatever behind this door, and we just build ideas upon that.
And for other games, how do you get inspiration and ideas from where? I mean,
Other
specifically from
games.
where?
So there is actually a game currently working on called Hyperacusis. It has a link on the screen. Uh, this game, I would say every time we build a game, we would have to start with the base, which is exactly why I always insist on having an idea before even getting the game as a whole. So usually when I do that, I stumble around what is trendy, what is going on around the world, what is very trending on the social media, and then I try and combine all this stuff, see what can I do something to make to attract people. By the time we were making our game, like the first few days, there was a game coming out popular called Lethal Company, which is a very basic idea. And at the same time, it made a whole large community. So I kind of get inspirations from other games sometimes to contain the, like just to gain reputation of a good game as a whole. And if I,
So
yes,
I want to ask you something. What's the most challenging part of game development?
sorry, could you say that again?
What's the most challenging part of game development?
Mhm. The most challenging part of game development is consistency. Because as a game developer, a normal project would take around 9 months, a year, sometimes 2 years, it can go on. And consistency is one of the hardest things, especially when sometimes you would face something we call a burnout, which is basically you getting tired of what you do, or sometimes you have a bug that you can't fix. So you have to stay consistent and try to be, as always, as active as possible. because if we, for example, leave the project for a while, it's gonna be very hard to come back for. So yeah, I think in every way possible, when you hear consistency is key, you just gotta link it with also game development as a thing.
So when you're running out of ideas to what you have to make, what will you do?
Um, if I run out of ideas, I either like maybe watch movies or watch content creators play more games. Sometimes I just have like a brainstorm session with my friends or my team members to say so, and there has to be like an idea coming out within these three people.
What are some of your most favorite games that inspire your work, or what favorite games of yours that inspire your work, and how do they inspire your work? Does any of
One of
them inspire your work?
one of the most games that inspired my work was Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 really excelled at being a great storyteller, having you feel as if like you are combined with the environment around, as if like you are one of the gang. If you ever heard about Red Dead Redemption 2, it's about, I would say, a gang member from the 1860s or somewhat older, back uh, in the west of America. And it was around like a gang member being a good man, but at the same time having to do bad stuff because in the end he was an outlaw. It shows you multiple major facts about how they live, and at the same time, the gameplay obviously is a crucial part where you would have to be somewhat tactic about things. But the main part was really the storytelling for me because, again, they visualize they visual their thoughts around, and that's something that inspires me. Another game I would say was Outlast. Outlast series, obviously, that's like a horror game series, very popular in the game field, and it had a sense of terror all the time, even though there weren't jump scares. So it would scare you out of nowhere. I mean, there is no reason to be scared, but you would still be scared. That's something I really looked into. How can you like play with people's minds and make them fear what doesn't even exist?
Can you tell us the typical, yeah, your daily activities as a game developer, your typical day as a game developer?
Well, as far as you know, right now I'm also a student in university, so I had to balance my time with university and game development as a daily activity. I go in the morning part of the day to the university from sometimes from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then I would spend the rest of my day doing my assignments for like 2 hours, and then I would start to look into game development, see what I have on my to-do list, see if there are new stuff, talk to my workmates, and then at night I would have my lunch. I mean, food is a crucial thing anyway. But I have my dinner actually at night, and then I work out, take a shower, and then sleep. That's kind of how my day goes around.
You manage your time well, if I could say.
Appreciate it.
Um, for your game development process, actually, what tools or software or maybe game engine that you use the most?
So the most game engine I use actually is Unreal Engine, but recently I've been also looking into a game engine called Godot because it uses a programming language that is similar to Python. It's called GDScript, and I saw Godot as an open source program, which is way different than Unreal Engine. And I think open source should have more attention towards like evolving and developing itself. So yeah, I'm just going around about these two game engines, but mostly I use Unreal Engine.
At first, was it easy to like make a game in Unreal Engine when you started? Was it easy for you or how?
Honestly, funny enough, Unreal Engine was one of the hardest engines to get into, which is as a known fact between game developers. It would be like a pyramid of it starts with Godot, then Unity, and then Unreal Engine at the top. And I decided to go with Unreal Engine immediately. Unreal Engine caught my attention because it was the graphics looked good to me, and that is something I really appreciate. The art direction of a game is always something I look into. But yeah, Unreal Engine is like very hard. It took me 2 years to at least start to, know almost everything about it. There are still lots of things I don't know about, but most of them I finally can confidently use.
So you use Unity before or how? Be- Game platforms that you have used before Unreal Engine, is there any?
No, my first engine was Unreal Engine, and then my second one was Godot or Godot.
I don't know much about that. So you've never used other like Unity or similar softwares?
Honestly, when I came to Unity, I came in a wrong time, I would say, because Unity had this problem with their runtime fees, which made a really whole big drama. I stepped away once they had that. It's like a long story, really. I wouldn't really suck you into that. But other software that are similar, I would say, or help me in development work, I use Blender as a 3D software application, which I can create models, 3D models for my game engine. I also use Adobe Substance Painter, which is where I make my textures for my models. And then I use Adobe Photoshop Illustrator to make like UI UX designs.
Um, for starters, what would you recommend? Unity or Unreal for starters?
Well,
Like
if you
those
are
who have basic knowledge for of modeling, 3D modelings.
uh, well, of course, don't go Unreal Engine immediately, especially if you also don't have this high-end component. Just go for Unity if you want to start. And if you want to add an option for Godot, which you should really take a look into, I would say also start with that because it's very, very easy. It's probably easier than Unity. But Unity is also a very great start because Unity has a lot bigger community. They have a lot more people to talk to make connections with. And especially whenever you want to start, it's probably you want to become an indie game developer. So Unity is a very good place to start. So for me, I would say go for Unity. If you find Unreal still interesting, then give it a try. It's fine to learn more than one game engine.
Sometimes you have errors and all those stuff, right? How do you actually balance creativity with those limitations, with technical limitations?
Well, these technical, I wouldn't call them limitations as much as I just call them bugs. Because in the end, if I want to make an idea, the only thing that goes through my way is actually these bugs. And there is always a go around, There has to be always a solution for everything, no matter how long it takes. For me, sometimes a bug actually took 3 months out of my time. But at some point, you get to the solution. Bugs in general are a very crucial part of game development. It's something you gotta learn to adapt with. If you are going to be a game developer, you have to be patient and you have to let yourself become more knowledgeable about everything surrounds you.
Sir, what was the toughest bug that you ever solved in your development journey, and how many days it took you? Like how many hours it took you for you just solve that bug to troubleshoot those bugs?
So through our horror game that we're making right now, the one that I called Hyperacusis, we have an enemy AI that goes around certain places. One of the bugs we had was the enemy not like operating after like 3 or 4 rounds, like suddenly stops. There are no errors by the console, whatever, so we had to check it up on our own step by step. And it did not take hours, did not take days, but it took 2 months because we basically had to rebuild the whole base again until we found out what was the problem. And it was something about just dynamically generating fields for the monitors, so whenever like there are new stuff or new objects added, the AI would adapt to it quickly.
Um, After I heard your story, what makes you interested into developing horror games? I guess you talked about horror games much, and what makes you interested in horror games?
I just like, I like affecting people in a very strong way. So I think horror games are the closest way to, creep someone out, especially like the way you can communicate with the person. I know that horror games are always very interesting topics, especially when it comes to your favorite content creator playing this specific game. It's funny to see them getting scared in the middle of nowhere, and you always play horror games with your friends, your family. It's something you always would be attracted to, especially when it comes to not know what's coming next, the curiosity of the player. Because also horror games are usually easier to make. That is why I'm still like very oriented into them, since I'm still, I would say, constantly a new game developer.
For us like starters like this, or have no experience for game development, what and how would you recommend us to approach game development, sir? Because yeah, I'm a bit interested in this.
Okay, well, you could start by knowing what do you want to do exactly, because game development is actually separated into multiple fields. You could be a programmer, you could be a designer, you could be a sound composer, you could be a story writer. There are multiple fields inside game development. If you want to start, you don't start with the technical side of game development. Try and download the program or the game engine you want to use, fiddle around with it, see how to use the engine before anything else. And then once you have like enough information about how you can use the engine, what is exactly the purpose of this engine, then you can go ahead and try to learn something more specific. Could be programming, could be designing, could be even editing the post-processing effects for your level. The chances and choices are almost unlimited, but it always depends on the person which he is more interested into. It could be either technical or more into the art direction.
Do you think like storytelling in a game is important, or yeah, how important is it?
Well, actually, storytelling could make your game one of the most successful games without having anything else unique. One of the most common examples, we have a game called Undertale. It's a 2D pixelated game, meaning it doesn't have any kind of graphics, doesn't have any kind of motions going around. But the story made it very popular to the point where the developer Toby Fox, the one who made this game, was very very popular around 2018. It was very popular. Everybody played it because the story caught their attention. And yeah, story writing is an actual role. Even if you like want to apply for a job into AAA games, which are like big companies, you would see storytelling as an actual job.
Would you prefer, if you are playing a game, would you prefer an open world game or a game that has limitations? Like once the story ends, the game ends.
Honestly, for me, I'm one of the people who likes things short and sweet. Um, the problem with me with open world games that are very tiring to make, not only that, but as a player, I think open world games could offer me a lot, but I don't be interested in it because I never get to see it unless I look for it. So, like there is a popular stereotype that in every open world game, you barely do any side quests. You would only do the main ones. Once the game ends, maybe you want to play them, maybe not, because you actually never saw them. Meanwhile, the games that limits you into some kind of levels, they always show you the content they have and they offer. And that's something also a game developer would appreciate. So for me, yes, I prefer to have a limited game and the story that finishes and there's nothing else because it could also gain more attention and like people wishing for a sequel for the game.
Um, for like game design and development, what's your approach to designing levels and gameplay mechanics?
Sorry, could you say that again?
What's your approach to designing levels and gameplay mechanics?
Okay, so designing
Yeah.
levels, I would start with drawing a piece of art, or like maybe drawing a house blueprint, whatever it is, really. We try to find balancing where should this puzzle be, where should this, door be, so the place can be has variety. At the same time, it doesn't be too complex nor too simple. So we usually draw it out first as a blueprint. We look at it, then we start building it in real life. We block things out, which means we only use blocks to make the shape of the room. And then we start like adding stuff like props, furniture, and anything else. For the technical part, which was a very hard one actually, and still is how you actually think around where you should start. In every way, and every time you make a technical thing, it has to be first classified as what is it exactly? Is it going to be a trigger? Is it going to be AI? Is it going to be a player ability? It has many things, and each class would have a way to start with. So yeah, that's it.
When you are creating a game, how do you make sure that the difficulty is balanced, sir? That's the
We
game.
have something called game testers. In instance, quality assurance. These people are the one that are responsible of testing the games, try to see how easy it is. Maybe it's too hard, maybe too easy. Because as a game developer, you can never actually know how difficult your game is, because since you're the one who made it. But yeah, we have like sometimes you go around Discord servers, you go around communities, ask for people around to give our game a test. In instance, we give them like a key to the game in the future, something like that. So in the way we can also, just try and balance our game as much as possible.
Can you explain me the process of creating game art and visuals?
Sorry, you want like inspirations or what is that?
How explain me how you create the game arts and the game's visuals?
How do I get them?
How you create the game's game art and the game's visuals?
So sometimes we go through two paths. One of the paths we actually try and buy asset packs from other people, especially when you're a programmer. Sometimes you don't really have much time to create your assets yourself. You go around bundles, like there are a lot of people who make bundles to share them, and we like buy them. The other approach, me using Blender, obviously, where I just build my own models create them on my own. But there are like, it takes me around also a day or two to finish them. Mine are always like for the simple things when I want to create them. But whenever like the thing is too complex, for example, maybe it's a whole character. It could be, we would just hire a 3D artist in a sense to just finish the work in a very professional way.
As for 3D artists, where do you actually hire them? What platform?
Okay, so once again, we can find a lot in Hitmarker, but we also find on Fiverr, Upwork, these kind of websites where we can actually find a lot of people. But most likely we go to Discord because we also do this thing where we don't have to pay the person immediately. We can do something called revenue share with them, which they can gain a percentage cut whenever like the project is done.
What's your approach for to writing code for games? Do you follow like certain practices?
Certain practices for like developing games.
Like,
I
do
would
you
say,
follow
yeah.
certain activities or like certain actions?
Well, actually, we go with the five whys, which if you ever, or the five W's, I would say: why, when, what, where, and how. I These things we always start with them whenever like I want to create I want to like solve a problem. I also like to always make sure that I'm in a good mood for doing something, so I can give it my best. And specifically when it comes to the design part of the game, I always have to be very thoughtful about it and always gain other people's perspectives in many ways.
How do you optimize performance for different platforms?
Optimizing can be a very difficult part, but in Unreal Engine, for example, it was actually very easy because there are multiple things that come with Unreal Engine, such as Nanite and Lumen. Even though they're still in the early access, they help us too much with like trying and um, more likely to lower the scale resolution of the objects that are far away from the player. And when the player comes closer to the thing, it becomes more clear and clear. The other thing is like we call or world partition, which is like deleting a whole part of the level whenever you are inside a room or something. So just, doesn't load unnecessary objects around. The most technique I use is this one actually. Whenever like I go through a door and I like go far away from a place, I make sure like it gets all deleted, just like temporarily, so it doesn't have to load them for no reason. That way it can optimize and make sure the laptop does not overheat.
Um, how do you prioritize tasks when working on a game?
How do I what? Sorry.
Prioritize tasks.
Oh, so honestly, for priorities, there isn't much to say about it, unless there is like a bug. If there is a bug, I always put that on the top priority because it could affect the other functions that I try to make. And but as a priority, I would say also the technical part of game development is always the first priority because designs and everything is counted as polishing the game, which is something we could do like in the very last phase of the project timeline. So I would say everything that is almost technical always most important than anything else.
When you are developing games, there must be bugs and glitches, right? How do you handle it? Do you have a team that is specifically for this task, or do you handle it alone or something like that?
Well, actually, it depends. Sometimes the bug is not too complex. You could just fix it yourself because we believe that every person who creates a bug, he should be the one who solves it because he knows best about the part. He's not as much as confused or like sometimes the other people can't really know what's going on because you're the one who did the program, not the other person. So it's always best to the one who makes the code is also the same person who solve its bugs.
Have you ever like get feedback from the player like there is a bug in specific parts of the games, and if there's a bug, how do you handle this feedback from the player?
Well, feedbacks are always like something we ask for whenever like we get people like to play test the game. When they mention the things that are like a problem, we look into it and see how the player actually played or like more say how he behaved in the game. Then we actually find out there is an actual problem and it's most likely going to be calculations. For instance, if you're like hiding, how much time does the monster take to stop looking for you? Or maybe if you're damaged, how much health you gain when you heal. These things are always, or like most likely, the things that people find as a bug. Sometimes a person can be stuck out of bounds, like getting outside the map accidentally, falling over the map accidentally. So, there are like some spaces that are actually not blocked, and we have to just, replace them with actual blocked elements.
Do you think like testing before releasing is like very important? How important is it?
There are two important things about releasing a game. First of all, make sure it's stable, not buggy. And the second thing, that you do a good marketing. Because as you can see, if the game still has bugs, you can't actually share it around because people will hate it immediately. It's like almost unplayable. So why am I playing a game when I can't even enjoy it? It's always good to have a good impression or first impression whenever you do something. And whenever like you do the game development part, I think you would have to always focus on having it stable enough to be played. That's like my main focus whenever I want to release a game.
What's your when you release a game? What's your strategy for improving a game after release?
Well, this could contain your idea about feedbacks because we always look into feedbacks. These are the ones who give us ideas. Sometimes, whenever like people also make content on our game as a YouTuber or anything like that, we look into their thoughts, their comments when they play the game, things that we can like improve on. For example, maybe a YouTuber play your game and then in the middle of it, oh, I wish they could do this. So you have this idea in your mind. You see, yeah, I actually can do that. It's actually not that hard. So yeah, that's how we improve our things. We just have like simple feedbacks going on. Yeah, and that's it.
Do you re-release your game when there is like after you improve it, and how? Yeah, how do you update your game? Is there a specific tools in Unreal Engine or something like that?
Well, it depends on where you actually share the game. There are multiple platforms like Steam, Epic Games, itch.io. They're like many platforms. One of the main ones are Steam, where we actually had to make a contract with them to able to make a store page. And whenever we want to update the game, there's like they have these specific tools where we can just upload the files and Steam would just detect what is changed and just put them on their original game file. And then they would share it. So like anyone who has purchased the game and downloaded it, they would receive a notification that there is a new update for this game.
After the game industry, how do you see the gaming industry evolving in the next 5 years?
I think the problem is with technical fields in general is it's a rapidly changing field, or yeah, computers in general are a really rapid changing field, meaning in any time anything would happen. But for me, I think game development can stay consistent, especially it's just like, something called a breed of life. A new trend comes in, an old trend goes out. But I think with the new evolving of like AI and people relying on stuff like their art and such, I think somewhat games can be made easier, which can be a bit problematic for us game developers, but at the same time, there would be a lot more potential of a game being more better than what it is, and it would take much less time for you to make.
And what are some of the biggest trends that you have noticed in the gaming world?
Sorry, biggest what?
The biggest trends you have noticed in the gaming world recently?
Well, the biggest trends are multiplayer games, actually, especially the horror ones. Like I mentioned before, there was this game called Lethal Company. It made a lot of people like it because it had this technique of voice over, or like, it's something like you can hear your own body's voice inside, like your friend's voice, and then if they get farther, it gets further and such. Multiple games where it depends on you and your teammates, not on you alone. So funny moments that happen, funny stuff. These are the things that contains or like gains people's attention. So multiplayer games are always the ones that get trendy most of the time.
When it comes to releasing games, how do you approach marketing and or promoting your games?
There are multiple ways of promoting a game. Uh, Taking two of them is either you make people like play your own game after releasing, or make them talk about it before releasing. You try and contact popular people, give them emails, or send them emails. Say, hello, I would like you to try this. I would pay you this amount of money if you do. Or you can go and make your own YouTube channel and create something called devlogs, which basically you showing the process of developing a game. Some people enjoy watching this stuff, watching someone developing a game. Uh, and it would like gain people's attention. Oh, I can't wait to get this game to be released. And just like that, like, it's something you have to always create media with, something that is always fun to watch. That is the crucial part about game development, where you can't just go with normal ads. You would have to kind of work around with making it fun to watch, because in the end, your game is meant to be fun, so it is also meant to be fun to watch.
How do you feel what advice do you have for aspiring game developers, especially the beginners ones?
You want like an advice?
Yeah, and advice.
Well, for whoever is joining, I think if you already look into the community, a lot of people would say game development is hard. A lot of people would say that game development is not good career anymore. Some people say there are no jobs. But there's also the also good side. Some people say they would make millions out of it. It always depends on the person. Nothing works for you from the start. We always have to try until we become almost perfect. I would say in game development, you just have to stay consistent, adapt to the new trends, always seek updates, and try from now to create content, create something that people would see, because this is one of the things that really can help you when you release a game. Gaining audience is not an easy thing, but is a very great thing to have once you have a game released.
How do you feel about the rise of indie games compared to AAA titles?
Indie games, AAA titles, there has been a lot going on between them recently. I mean, for 2 years now, indie games has been really successful. AAA games are becoming more greedy, becoming more just like money machines. So like people are starting to really hate on them recently. Also, every time a new game is released by Ubisoft, by EA, there's always a catch. There is always a catch, like multiple content for money. You buy this game, you would have to buy things inside this game. The huge difference between indie games and AAA games is the price difference and how the game can be actually made and like fun to be made. Because you see, AAA are made by people who want to gain money, when indie games are made by people who already had the passion before. So indie games are more, I would say, coming from the heart of the developer more than just the mingle of you know uh, I want to make money. When for AAA studios, the developers that work, it's not actually their own idea. It's always like something from other roles, so it doesn't always match up as much as it do with indie games.
I guess that's all from me. Dan, is you have any addition? Okay, sir. I guess that's enough from us. Would you like give advice or motivation before we close or something to out there?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Hanif and Mr. Zidan, for having me on this podcast. It was a pleasure for me to have this conversation with you. Again, as an advice, just no matter what you want to do, if you like it, do it. Don't look into what people think about it, and just try and focus into what you love. Focus into it, build it. If you fail, just get up again. A lot of people fail, and you will always learn from your mistakes, and inshallah, one day you will become one of the best prominent people around the world.
Okay, I guess that's all from us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.